The last thing Tommy ever said wasn't a scream. It wasn't a cry for help. It was my name. I heard him call me from somewhere deep inside the bush, calm as if he were standing only a few meters away. I answered without thinking. The voice replied again. Only this time, Tommy was standing beside me. That was the moment I realized something else had learned how to sound exactly like him. The summer of 1997 was the hottest anyone in our little Victorian town could remember. Most afternoons were spent riding our bikes, buying icy poles from the servo, and wandering the dry bush tracks behind the old caravan park until Mom shouted for me to come home before dark. Back then, the bush felt endless. Towering eucalyptus trees stretched so high they swallowed the sky, and every breeze carried the smell of warm bark and dusty leaves. It was beautiful during the day. At sunset, it became somewhere completely different. There were 4 of us: Tommy, Liam, Sarah, and me. We'd been inseparable since primary school. Adults often joked that we'd explored every inch of those hills. The truth was, there was one place none of us had ever dared visit. An old fire trail ended at a circle of unusually white gum trees. Nobody fenced it off. There weren't any warning signs. But every parent in town had exactly the same rule. If someone calls your name from the bush after sunset, keep walking, no matter who it sounds like. None of us believed the story. It was just another scary tale adults invented to stop kids wandering too far. At least, that's what we thought. A week before Tommy disappeared, strange things started happening. Sarah insisted she'd heard her father calling her from the trees while he was working interstate. Liam found fresh footprints circling his tent during a camping trip. Yet every print stopped suddenly, as though the person had simply vanished. Then Tommy found something that unsettled even him. Nailed to a dead gum tree was an old wooden sign. Most of the paint had peeled away. Only 5 words remained. Don't answer after sunset. Tommy laughed. He said somebody was playing a prank. But when he reached out to touch the sign, we all heard someone quietly whisper his name. Tommy. The bush was completely still. No birds, no insects, nothing. Tommy smiled nervously. Did one of you do that? None of us answered. We should have gone home. Instead, Tommy convinced us to follow the narrow trail beyond the sign. The further we walked, the quieter everything became. Even our footsteps sounded strangely distant. After several minutes, we reached the white gum trees. They formed a perfect circle around an empty patch of earth. No grass, no rocks, just smooth, dark soil. Sarah refused to step inside. She said the place felt wrong. Tommy laughed again. To prove nothing was there, he walked straight into the center. Nothing happened. He turned towards us with a grin. See? Just stupid stories. Then every tree around us creaked at exactly the same moment. Slowly, deliberately, like dozens of people shifting their weight at once. The temperature dropped so suddenly that goosebumps spread across my arms. Then came the voice. Ethan. It sounded exactly like my mother, except she was supposed to be home. We ran. At least, I thought we all did. Branches whipped across our faces as we crashed through the scrub, desperate to reach the fire trail before darkness swallowed the bush completely. Halfway back, Sarah grabbed my arm. Ethan. Where's Tommy? I stopped so suddenly, Liam nearly ran into me. Tommy wasn't behind us. His bike was still leaning against the first gum tree we'd passed earlier, but Tommy himself had disappeared. We shouted until our throats hurt. Nothing. Then, faintly, from somewhere deeper inside the bush, "Told you I'd catch up." It was Tommy's voice. calm, relaxed, exactly the way he'd always sounded. Liam took a step toward it. Sarah screamed, "Don't answer him!" The voice came again, closer. "Ethan?" "I'm over here!" Only this time, it sounded as though it was smiling. Sarah was the first to move. She grabbed both Liam and me by our shirts and dragged us backwards. "Don't look into the trees," she whispered. Her voice was shaking so badly I barely recognized it. "But that's Tommy," Liam insisted. "No," she said, staring at the ground. "Listen carefully." The voice called again. "Ethan." A few seconds later, "Sarah." Then, "Liam." It wasn't speaking naturally. It was repeating our names with the exact pauses we'd used earlier that afternoon, almost as if something had been listening to us and practicing. Every word sounded perfect. Every emotion was almost right. Almost. But there was something missing. It had no breath, no strain, no life, just a flawless imitation. Without another word, we sprinted back to town. The police searched the bush until dawn, then for another week. Volunteers came from neighboring towns with search dogs and helicopters. They found Tommy's bike. They found his red cap hanging neatly from the lowest branch of a white gum tree. They even found fresh footprints leading into the clearing. But there were no footprints leading out. Eventually, the official search ended. People stopped talking about it. The white gum trees became another story parents whispered to their children. And every one of us carried the same question into adulthood. Had Tommy wandered away? Or had something answered him first? 25 years later, Sarah called me. Liam had died unexpectedly the month before. Heart attack. But before he died, he'd left behind one sentence in his notebook. The voice has started using Tommy again. 3 days later, Sarah and I drove back to the old fire trail. The caravan park had closed years earlier. The servo was gone. Most of the town looked different. The bush didn't. It looked exactly as I remembered. Waiting. The white gum trees were still standing. The clearing was untouched, as if time had refused to enter it. We stepped inside together. Nothing happened for nearly a minute. Then the wind disappeared. The air became impossibly still. A familiar voice echoed between the trees. "Ethan?" This time, I didn't answer. Another voice followed. Sarah's late mother, then my father, then Liam. One after another. Perfect. The sounds circled us, growing closer with every second. The shadows between the trees began to move, not like people walking, but like silhouettes peeling themselves away from the trunks. Dozens of them. Tall, thin, featureless. Each one paused just beyond the edge of the clearing, watching, waiting. Then one stepped forward. Its face shifted slowly until it became Tommy. Exactly 13 years old. Same freckles, same smile, same backwards red cap. He looked at me with sad eyes. "You should have answered," he said softly. Then his smile stretched just a little too wide. Behind him, every shadow copied the same smile. Sarah grabbed my hand before I could move. We ran without looking back. The voices followed us almost all the way to the fire trail. Only when we reached the old road did they suddenly stop. Not fade, stop. As though we'd crossed an invisible line. Neither of us ever returned. A year later, the council quietly closed the walking tracks after several unexplained disappearances. No official reason was ever given. Locals blamed unstable trees. Visitors believed the warning signs. The older residents simply nodded without saying much. Some stories they believed were safer left unfinished. Sarah moved interstate not long after. We still speak every anniversary of Tommy's disappearance. Neither of us says his name first. Neither of us sleeps well that week. And whenever either of us hears someone calling from outside after dark, we always check who's standing beside us before answering. Last winter, I found an old disposable camera while cleaning out Mum's garage. Most of the photos had faded, except one. It showed the four of us standing beside the white gum trees in the summer of 1997. Tommy was smiling beneath his backwards red cap. Liam stood beside him. Sarah was waving, and I was taking the picture. There should only have been 4 children. Instead, there were 5. Behind Tommy stood a tall figure made entirely of shadow. Its hand rested gently on his shoulder. When I looked again a few seconds later, the figure was gone. But Tommy's smile had changed, and written across the bottom of the photograph, in handwriting that wasn't there before, were 6 words. "I still know your voice, Ethan."